Hey dads, this is John Profit with BeDadly.com. Just wanted to let you know we have a new sponsor coming on board. That sponsor is Genesee Nutrition. One of our earlier podcast guests, Will Carr, is the founder of that company, and basically they're nutrition bars. They're very, very good tasting nutrition bars, great for taking on the trail or, an impromptu little day trip. You can just throw them in your backpack and be ready to rock. And so as a sponsor, we are offering our listeners a 15% discount. So if you go to GeneseeNutrition.com and make your order, be sure to put in code BDadly15 and you'll get 15% off of your order. So yeah, if you're a nutrition bar aficionado, go ahead and check them out at GeneseeNutrition.com and make sure to use your coupon code BDadly15. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to the Be Dadly podcast, where we discuss all things dadly. From being an entrepreneur while caring for toddlers, to raising screenagers and talking the birds and the bees. We're here to help you traverse the vast and dynamic landscape of fatherhood. Enjoy practical advice, lots of puns, and even a few heart-touching moments.
And the dad jokes are pretty good too.
And now your host, Brandon Jones.
And just like that, we are back. I am Brandon Jones, your host for the Be Dadly Show, and we have today Logan Lepper, the founder of The Authentic Exposure. He's a filmmaker, photographer, entrepreneur. He interweaves his fatherhood in with his work, also has a blend of spirituality, all the things I love. And he's a very inspiring character. If you want to follow him, you've got to follow The Authentic Exposure on Instagram. You will see the most inspiring photos of family, of work, of his studio, and of course his little one, Atlas, absolutely adorable child, and he is a very talented photographer. So if you want to see some inspiration, be sure to check that out. If you have not subscribed, please consider subscribing to the Be Dadly Show. We really, really, really appreciate all the support. And with that intro out of the way, let's get into it. Logan, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So Logan, I got to ask you, man, what's fatherhood been like for you? What's this journey been like?
It's been incredible, man. It is something obviously I had no context of what it would be like. And I didn't even really know, when my wife and I met, we were an adamant no children. So it was about, I want to say 5 years into our relationship where that finally shifted and we definitely wanted to have kids. And I, of course, have no clue what that's going to be like. And then he comes out and I realize I had this quote and I had this saying that actually went with an Instagram picture, of course. And before him, I never knew I wanted to be a father. After him, a father is the only thing I want to be. And that's truly like all I really care about now is just how can I provide and be the best father, show him the best way, do what I can to help him find his purpose. Like that's literally all I care about. So,
and I can feel this. I mean, like you're the dad that wears the baby on your chest. Yeah. Like I love that, by the way.
Quite literally sometimes too. Yeah.
Literally you're wearing your kid around, you have him in your workspace. We recorded the very first season of this show in your studio. It was such a joy. And I knew I was in the right place when I walked in and there was someone greeting me at the door going, hold on, shh. And we opened the door and there was a baby sleeping in your office. And you were like, come on through. He's in his nap. And I was like thinking, this is amazing. We've got the baby here. It was like a sign to me that we were in the right studio.
Well, thanks. Yeah. We, when my wife and I found out we were going to have a baby, we were like, how can we make this easier on us? So we started looking for office space together and it just really landed perfectly in our lap to have that space and be able to have him there. And I wanted to be an involved father. I was like, I don't want to just pass him off to a nanny. I don't want to pass him off to a babysitter. If I can make it work where I can have him at the studio, then let's figure out a way to make that happen. And we do. And so now it's like, I pay for an assistant instead of a nanny. So that way he can handle a lot of the work. And then I can just be with Atlas at the studio when he is there with me.
Yeah, that's great. And to be clear, your wife doesn't work in the same studio. She has an office next to yours. Is that correct?
We're connected. So we actually have a suite together and we divided it with the hall door. So she has the front half of the suite and I have the back half of the suite. Yeah. So she can just come and go during the day. It was great in the early, the first like 4, 5, 6 months of breastfeeding where she's back there every couple hours and she could just walk back in and come back and do it and then go back to her clients up front.
Of course. Yeah. So I'm curious, why were you so clear that you didn't want
unresolved trauma.
So you and her were both like, look, we've got a lot of baggage. We're not bringing a child into the world, or
we didn't really have that conversation. Looking back at it, of course, that's what was going on. We didn't necessarily talk about it, but I looked at, both of us had childhoods where I was like, I don't want to, it wasn't that I didn't want to bring a child into it. It was, I need to maybe focus more on taking care of myself, or I don't even do well taking care of myself at that time.
Right.
How in the world am I going to handle, raising a child? Quite honestly, I was selfish back then too. I wanted my time for me. We wanted to travel a lot and do our fun stuff and party and build our businesses. And I was like, I don't know where we can fit a child into this,
Totally.
And am I ready to give up my social life? Those were all the questions at that time. Obviously now I see it's much different, and we integrated a child into our life very well because we got through all of the individual work that each of us needed to do in order to integrate a child in perfectly.
And so was Atlas planned? Did you guys say, hey, we're at this space now where I think this makes sense?
Yeah. He was planned in the sense of yes, we were ready to have a child. We were ready to there was space there for him, and we were ready for it. Not so much planned in okay, we're going to do it on this day or this month, and let's get pregnant right now.
Right.
That just organically worked itself out. But we definitely had that moment where okay, I think we're going to, we're going to pull the goalie and see what happens. So
That's great.
Yeah.
So, okay, you mentioned, you touched a little bit on your journey as a child a little bit, and then it was, how was that?
I just, when I started to unravel what I needed to unravel with my trauma and my childhood programming and experiences, and what therapy did for me. So I went to therapy as I got older and finally hit, I think we, as men and women too, but I only know it from the male's perspective. I go through my 20s of basically just survival mode, trying to make it, trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. At that time, also living paycheck to paycheck. So basic needs aren't taken care of. So that's what my focus is on. Then all of a sudden I kind of get to a place where my head's above water at 30. I can start to, look at different components of my life, different components of my personality and things like that. So, and then I start to look back at childhood, and things started to pop up where I was like, this doesn't feel right. Things don't feel right. I started to get some dad resentment in there, looking back at certain situations between him, how he raised me, what he said to me, and things like that. And my wife, she's a psychotherapist, so she was like, hey, I think it's time for you to go to therapy. I can't talk you through this conflict of interest. I'm going to start saying things about your dad that you're not going to like, probably. So it was a pretty easy decision for me to go to therapy. I was like, all right, let's figure some of this stuff out. Boy, you don't know what can of worms you're opening when you start.
Absolutely.
When you start, you get that first layer, and it just starts going deeper and deeper. And that first year was miserable, of therapy, unraveling all the things from childhood that affected me, that programmed me, that conditioned me to act a certain way, that protected me, that kept me in fight or flight. All those things that you have to unravel. It's not fun, but it's necessary. So once I got through that, then I think I was able to understand myself better, understand my parents better, forgive myself for even being upset at my parents for just doing the best that they could.
Right.
The resentment faded because it wasn't about them purposely doing what they did. They didn't know. They just went about the best way they could at that time. So I think once I was able to get through all of that, then I could actually see myself as a father. I could see myself as a dad. I could see myself with a family. I could see myself raising a kid. Prior to all that, I couldn't even visualize or see what that would look like. Yeah.
Did you have any notions about therapy prior to hearing from your wife that, hey, this might be something you may want to try?
No. So it's funny. My dad used to always make fun of, all of my sister's friends or anybody that was in college that was getting their psychology degree. I remember this specifically growing up. My dad always had this thing about like, oh, you're just going to get a psychology degree. That's not very hard. And lo and behold, I marry a psychotherapist. Like, yeah. So no, I didn't really have any hangups on therapy. I think I was indifferent about it. I was like, well, if it can help, like, I don't know what this will be like, just like talking this out. I don't really know I knew I didn't have the tools in myself to really dig deeper. I needed somebody to ask me the right questions. I needed somebody to prompt me. Like I could kind of start to get a little lower and a little deeper within my psyche, but I also know now, having gone through more spiritual work too, your mind can easily trick you and talk you and make you believe everything is okay. So I knew I needed somebody to prompt me. So I was all for it, especially I knew I didn't feel good. I knew I was sad. I wasn't depressed or anything like that, but I knew I was just sad and I knew something was off. And if this person was going to help me understand that better, I'm all for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I did a good bit of that work myself. It was a really, really important time for me, and it uncovered a lot of things I didn't realize were in there.
Yeah.
And I was kind of the person, I couldn't let things be quiet. I needed things to keep moving. The moment things started getting quiet, I started thinking everything was wrong. I started thinking something I wasn't doing wasn't right, or I had to keep my body in motion. And I did a lot of coping, and I didn't realize I was doing that.
Yeah.
Until then, I started doing the therapy and started doing some of this like work on. I did EMDR, which is really, really powerful.
Oh wow,
for me.
yeah,
very powerful around some childhood trauma. And I was like, oh, that's why I'm always looking for something. That's why I'm always like, I'm just constantly trying to pacify myself with these different things.
Yeah, I very much didn't understand that I was coping either. I like drugs and alcohol in my 20s for a bachelor in Austin. Like, why not? That's normal. That's normal. That's exactly what you do. Like, I'm just out having a good time. I'm out meeting people. I'm staying up late. I'm getting up early to go train people. Like, I'm managing my life just fine.
Yep.
Oh no, that comes to a head at some point.
We also share the personal trainer background.
Yeah.
I used to literally say like, work hard, party harder.
Dude. Yeah.
Like, you can work hard. Just when we get done, let's party harder.
That's exactly how I feel like in the training world too, especially with the guys.
Oh, man.
You live and die by that.
100%. If you want to drink and hang out with people that are really going to go all in, what we used to say, going ham.
Yeah.
If you want to drink with people who are going to go ham, it's the trainers. Like they work so hard to keep their diet and everything in order that the moment they get to drink, it's like,
the justification from a trainer, like you can justify any destruction of your body because you're like, I take care of it during the day. Exactly. Like I do all this.
Know all the stuff I do.
Yeah. It was horrible.
Yeah.
I think about everything that my body went through between pre-workout drinks, protein shakes during that time, and then alcohol at night, drugs at night. Like, holy crap, my body was in fight or flight 24/7.
Absolutely.
Like,
yeah, that was another thing I didn't realize was occurring is when I decided to go the sober route, I did it as a test of will. I was like, you know what? Are they controlling me or am I controlling the situation? Like, am I at the mercy of these things? It was kind of having this little quandary inside myself where it was like, I've been using these for a long time. Have I been using them or are they using me?
Yeah.
And so I decided, I was like, you know what? This year I'm just going to be like, I'm just going to go sober. And I was like, that's just what I'm going to do. So I remember it was actually my birthday. I was having a birthday party and I got the microphone. I had a mic set up. I don't know why, we were just having fun, but I had a mic set up and I was like, hey guys, just want to say thank you so much for being here. And I love all of you, each and every one of you that have been invited to this party. I just love you. You have a very special place in my heart. And I want to tell you guys something that is a decision that I've decided to make. I'm going sober this year, and I just want to give you the invitation. Anybody who wants to join me, anybody at all who maybe you've been thinking about, and I'm like talking, and one of the guys that's at the party with me goes, all right, that's about enough of that. He grabs the mic from me jokingly like, no, we're not talking people out of the party yet.
Yeah.
We're just getting started.
Yeah.
So anyways.
So how long have you been sober then?
So I did that year, and that was a really important a very important year for me. And the year was my birthday. So right at my birthday, I was done at a year, and I had a couple glasses of wine to celebrate a little bit of like, hey, I did it. I'll just have 2 glasses of wine. Had 2 glasses of wine. That was fine. Then I was like, I made this decision. I was like, I'll only drink on special occasions. Well, that New Year's came up. We had drinks. I thought, okay, doing fine. And the next year, I kept with the only on special occasions, which was good because it kept me from drinking throughout the week.
Yeah.
And I was like, really like, I was clear. It needed to be like somebody's birthday, a wedding, something really, really important in order for that to happen. And that went on for quite a while, for I would say even like a few years. I was just like very like, hey, I only drink during special occasions. Thank you so much. Passing on the drinks. And then last year, I started to get a little looser with it. And then my partner's father came into town. And he convinced me it was a special occasion because he's in town. He's not usually in town. And I was like, yeah, well, that's not really usually on my list. And he's like, no, Brandon, we're going to drink tonight. So we ended up having pitchers of margaritas. And we had several of these pitchers from Polvos. Have you been to Polvos?
I have back in the day. And I have had those margaritas.
Dangerous. So delicious and so strong.
Yeah.
I think they have Everclear in them. Or
Probably.
Something. I mean, something ridiculous.
Yeah.
So we had way too many of those. And then I got it in my head, I want a cigar. It's just the weirdest. It was just like the weirdest thing. Like I even have cigars at home, but I'm like, I want to go have a cigar. And so I was like telling Bethany's father, I was like, you want to go have a cigar with me, or asking him? He's like, no, I don't think so. And then her sister's boyfriend, I'm like, you come have a cigar with me, Nick, let's go. And he's like, I'm passing on the cigar. I'm like, you know what? You guys can all say no, but I'm going to have a cigar. Bethany is kind of upset because she's like, hey, we've got the kids. I'm going to take them home. But like, why don't you just come home? Just don't go for the cigar. Just come home. And I'm in the Polvos parking lot like, if I want to have a cigar, I can have a cigar. And trust me, the margaritas were way talking.
Oh,
right
of
now.
course.
I'm out.
Of course.
Like,
yeah.
And she's like, well, you need to be careful driving. You really shouldn't be doing this. This is setting a bad example for your son. And we're having this little fit. And so I get my way and I go to have my cigar. They drive home. The cigar bar was closed. So all that fight, all that fuss, and I was super upset that there was just like too much energy poured into that. Then I drive home and I buy a cheap cigar from the gas station because the cigar bars weren't open. And I was like, I didn't think I had one, which it turned out I had some in my closet, but I'm drunk. And so I get this stupid cigar and then I go and I smoke that. I get a headache from that, feel nauseous, go to bed nauseous, wake up super hungover, like way, way, way too hungover. And I just said, I that wasn't me.
Yeah.
Like that just wasn't me. Yeah. So I decided to put it down. And so that was last year. Shortly after ACL, and I haven't had a drink since.
Nice, congrats, man.
So yeah, thanks, man. It's been good. It keeps me a lot more level.
Yeah,
which is good because when you're a father, there's a lot of things that want to throw you off your center.
Yeah,
and being sober keeps you level. What about you? Have you done it?
Yeah, let's see, I didn't really have a date. I didn't have this moment where I was like, I'm going to be sober.
Right.
Like it just. Honestly, it sort of landed in alignment with when I started a more spiritual practice. It truthfully just stopped agreeing with me. And I was able to notice that other person, like right away. Like I would drink and then all of a sudden I'm conscious and aware of like seeing that happen. And I'm like, well, I can't do this anymore if like there's no enjoyment in it because I'm no longer unconsciously drinking. I'm consciously drinking and seeing where my subconscious is then coming up. And I'm like, this isn't any fun. Like, I can't do this anymore. And I was a pretty avid pot smoker too. So, and both of those things, I'll never forget. The last time I got drunk was horrible. Similar to yours. I was out with some friends at a show. They had an extra ticket. My wife was actually out of town and they're like, hey, come watch, I think it was, a Christmas Carol or something at the theater. Our good friend Leanne, her parents love hanging out with them. They're a lot of fun. Well, they had the like fancy seats at the theater where you get a bottle of wine. I was like, well, I've never sat at these seats before. Like, yes, let's have a bottle of wine. That sounds great. I actually hadn't drank for 3 months up to that point. And that night, man, I woke up there. It was bad. We went to the Gibson after, and then I woke up at their house in the guest room, and like the worst hangover ever. It was like a 3-day hangover. I'm like, that's it. Like I can't do that anymore. And since then, I think maybe, the year following that, I maybe had like a glass of wine here or there, maybe like 3 times. But that was the last time I was ever drunk. And then since Atlas is born, I haven't had anything because truthfully, it never even crosses my mind anymore, which is really nice. Like I just don't even think about it. And now that there's non-alcoholic wine and non-alcoholic beer, like if I ever do just feel like I want that flavor.
Yep.
My wife and I have found a couple like non-alcoholic wines that we like, and I'm like, this is the perfect placebo for me.
Right.
Like that's all I need. So,
yeah, it's interesting. I haven't made that connection that, you started to notice the distinction between you and that spiritual you drinking, or the old you and the new you.
Yeah.
But I literally started saying to people, I think I'm allergic to alcohol, and I never knew it. But actually what it was is like prior to a lot of my personal transformation, I literally I had a hard time ever really getting drunk. Like I was drunk, but I never really felt like super inebriated and stuff like that. And then post that, I started to feel like hungover a lot more often, a lot more reactive to the drinks. I found myself like, putting it, not like kind of like putting a governor on it and being like, oh no, I don't want to drink too much.
Yeah.
And before that, I never even considered drinking too much. I was like, well, just drink as much as you want.
Yeah. Once you become conscious of it, you can't really turn it off. And once you've tapped into your higher self, that higher self is going to be like, hey man, what the F are you doing right now? Like, again, you can't turn it off. And then it becomes this, it's almost worse because then the guilt or shame, at least for me, of sitting here knowing I'm like watching myself drink and watching it get worse and knowing what it's going to feel like in the morning. I'm like, well, what good is coming from this if now during the moment I'm also going through guilt and shame of drinking?
Because I'm already here now.
I'm already here. So what, like this, I can't do this.
It can
anymore.
only get worse.
Yeah.
There's
There's nothing good about this that's going to happen. So,
yeah.
And then also I had somebody, one time she put it perfectly that once you have a spiritual practice and you start to expand consciously, the second I took like a drink, it's almost like I could feel my consciousness like shrink back to nothing. And then it was like my conversations weren't expansive, and it just all of a sudden became very surface level again, like where my mind was. And I was like, well, this sucks. Like I can't.
Yeah,
do this
I can't
anymore.
stand small talk.
Yeah.
It's tough for me. People go out and I'm like, okay, we're out, and I'm like thinking, yeah, nobody's talking here. You're talking. You're making noise with your mouth. I see your mouth moving, but
there's
nobody's
no depth.
having a conversation.
Yeah. So
that's, man. It's
so yeah. My sober. I honestly don't even know. It's been 2.5, 3 years of not drinking. I'm not really sure. It just kind of stopped one day.
Yeah. I can totally get that, man. I'm with you on it. It's a phase.
It is. And I think once you find your passion and your purpose and the things that you want to wake up for every morning and the things that you want to be alive for, the things that you got to be like on point for.
Absolutely.
I can't even risk the last thing I want to do is wake up at 6 a.m. hungover and pull Atlas out of bed and be like,
totally.
This isn't flying.
Absolutely. Yeah, man, I'm totally with you. I'm curious, what are some of your favorite parts about being a dad? Like, what are you enjoying?
Man, it's the little things. It is that smile that he's starting to kiss now.
Oh,
he is starting to hug now. He actually puts his arm around me. The moment he grabs my 2 fingers on a walk, the expressions he's giving me with his eyebrows, even when it's something where I'm like, hey, Atlas, you can't do that. And he's like, why? Like he can't say it yet, but he can express it.
Totally.
He has this moment where he'll sleep in bed with us, and we'll have the baby monitor on him, and me and my wife are already awake, and we'll just have the phone set up, and we know it's going to happen where all of a sudden his head just pops up, and that's what you see on the monitor. Like we have like a pillow barrier around him so he doesn't like fall off the bed, and all of a sudden you just see this little head pop up, and it's just like that first feeling in the morning of knowing he's just awake is like excitement to me to like go in there and grab him. Last night I had to put him to bed. Normally my wife does it, 90% of the time. And he like was super cuddled with me. So that moment of like, I get to feed him a bottle. I get to give him his most basic need to survive, to feed him. And then he's there like forward spooning me, arm around me, like curled up in me, and falls asleep. Like that to me is just the most incredible thing in the world.
It's kind of a little slice of heaven, isn't it?
It is. Like, it's a big slice of heaven.
Yeah.
There's nowhere else. You want to talk about presence? That moment right there. Every time I'm with him, it's complete presence because he's just an incredible little being. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah. And
it's so pure.
He's the future. So, I mean, it's not just about creating a better world for him. It's like making sure he understands how to be that part of a better world, and how to express that and how to bring his purity into a place that hopefully brings more light. So watching him go through all of that is just super special.
That's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the harder parts that comes up, I feel like as they grow, because we have to help them, right, become the future, become capable, self-reliant, become responsible, become empathetic, use critical thinking skills. We have like all these things we really need to give them. What's challenging is because, like you say, he's so angelic, he's so sweet, and they're so sweet and innocent and playful and everything like that. When you have to learn those skills, for example, responsibility or to be self-reliant, some of these things, the journey of learning those can be unpleasant.
Your sons, you have two, right?
Yeah, I have two. I have a 16-year-old and a 6-year-old.
Yeah, so you're quite a bit ahead of me.
Yeah.
Please don't burst my bubble yet.
I won't burst your bubble, but I'm thinking about like how I'm thinking back on little sweet Cohen. He's so sweet. He co-slept, still co-sleeps pretty often. We just got his room set up and he's feeling good about it. But he still wants to cuddle in bed with me. And I have such a hard time saying no.
How can you? Yeah. How can you say no?
And most people in America are like, what? Can't be sleeping with you at 6 years old? I'm like, speak to other cultures.
Yeah. Speak to almost every other culture.
Exactly. And most people all live in the same house. Come on, give me a break.
Yeah. I'm half Korean. And when I was over there last time, it's cover the floor in Korean blankets, and we have 40 family members all sleeping in the living room together. Right. That's just how it is.
Yeah, and we were learning about the Danes and their togetherness. They call it hygge. It's spelled Hygee, but pronounced hygge. But it's about together, coziness, and it's the way that I've been. Someone shared it with me. Is it's kind of like setting up almost like a date night, like a warm romantic setting. But you're not just you and your spouse. It's you and your family. Yeah. You set candles. You turn on the fireplace. You put a little low music on. You create this feeling.
That sounds
for
amazing.
Everyone. It sounds amazing. Yeah. And I'm like, I set the tone. I put the candles on and read my son a book. And it's like a magical little cozy little space. And I like going to sleep with him. I used to try to put him to sleep and then go to bed later and think I'd just get me time in the end. And then I'd wake up drained. And I was like, why? I'm tired. Just go to sleep with him. So I started just going to sleep with him. I love it.
That's what I do. We go to sleep pretty much the same time he does, and then we get our alone time in the morning.
In the morning, exactly.
It's great. I love it in the morning. Get me up at 5 a.m.
Totally.
Give me that 5 to 6 with Casey, or 5 to maybe sometimes 7 if he makes it, and we're good. And we're sharper in the morning anyway. So 100%. It's we might as well have our conversations and check-ins at 5 a.m.
Totally. Yeah, and that's the thing is if you get the morning. I've kind of defined it as, or described it as you spend your time in the evening. If you think you're getting your me time in the last hours of the night, you're spending your time. But if you will swap those hours for the morning, you invest your time in the morning.
So true.
It's you're going to totally get more value. The ROI on the morning hours is way different than you sitting there binge watching a Netflix or watching, whatever political talk you like to watch or whatever it is that you're doing in the evening. Way better spent in the morning actually investing in something you care about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, didn't mean to burst your bubble. It was just that I was sitting there thinking and reflecting on how sweet and loving and cute. And then I'm like, And then comes that time where you have to teach them about being responsible.
I know.
And it's like, it's hard because they're struggling and you want to save them and you can't. You have to say, hey, I'm so sorry, man. Yeah. Oh, I know. I get it. You're upset. And you're going to be upset a lot in your life. You're going to have to learn how to manage that.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, you're having the fun times.
I am having the fun. I get it now when everybody said, when we tell him he's a year old, well, he's 14 months now, but everybody's like, oh, you're hitting that really fun stage. And like, it really set in this last like month. I'm like, ooh. This is where it's at.
They're like the little personality starting to show up.
It's so cute.
It's so interesting how much their facial structure changes, like their mobility, all of these things shift, and they start to like have this, this different types of presence.
They're just expressing themselves.
They
more.
are way more. Yeah.
I
loved your little facial expression of like, wait, why?
Yeah.
Why can't we?
And he has very expressive eyebrows. I love it. He says a lot in his face. It's cute.
That's beautiful. So let's shift gears a little bit. Because to me, just want you to know from the outside, you're a very inspiring entrepreneur.
Thank you.
I see when your brand is Authentic Exposure, but it literally is. It feels very authentic. The way you communicate is very authentic. Your brand is authentic. I always notice that the lighting, everything, it feels so natural. You feel very much of like a natural entrepreneur who's pursuing his highest purpose, his greatest interest. But how did you get there? I mean, how does someone who's like, I want to be an entrepreneur, but like most of us are sitting there focusing on business models and pro formas and like how did you get to a place where you're living this life where you're pursuing what you're truly passionate about and making money doing it?
How much time do we have? It's a long story.
Give us the short end.
I can give you the quick cliff notes. I'd say if we go back, I remember in my teen years, there was that question in high school. I'm 40 now, so of course my high school years were a little different than a little more recent years with people, but they always had that stupid question that was like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like
the president.
Yeah.
That's what I said.
And who knows, sometime in high school.
Such a weird answer because now I do not want to be the president.
Or you take the test that tells you, what the personality test that gets you to, oh, this is the perfect job for you. It's like, oh my gosh. I remember saying, I don't know what I want to be. I know I just don't want to work for anybody else. And that was the truth. And I graduated high school. I actually took a year off in between high school and college. Then that year was miserable. And I was like, maybe I should go to college. Went to college for 2 years, then dropped out because I was like, I don't know what I want to do, but this isn't for me. I'm not just going to go get a degree and go work a corporate gig. Fell into the service industry for a little bit, trying to like find myself. This is early 20, I was 21 when I dropped out, 2021. Actually lived out of my car for like 3 months and fell into the service industry. And then lo and behold, 2 years after that, end up in the corporate world. I actually got a job with Penske Truck Leasing, which shout out to them. Great company to work for if you are going the corporate route. But anyway, did a couple of years with them. And then that's when I kind of had my first, I call it, say, quarter life crisis at 25. I was still in my hometown, working a corporate gig for 2 years, had already kind of moved up the ladder and was like, is this what I want the rest of my life to be? Like, is this going to be it? And I sort of had a crisis. And then my girlfriend at the time was like, hey, I want to move. That took us to Austin. I left Penske, left everything at home. Family and friends thought I was crazy. No support whatsoever. Come to Austin. Still didn't really know what I wanted to do. Had to go back into the service industry. So that was quite humbling after kind of being in a corporate gig for a couple of years. And then it was about 6 months into Austin, 8 months into Austin is when I realized I was like, hey, I think this place is kind of fit. There's a lot of activity going on here. I was a high school athlete. I was starting to get back into shape myself. I was like, maybe I can be a personal trainer here. Like, why don't I just go get my certification and see what happens? So the start of my journey wasn't this like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to start my own business. I didn't have this like huge motivational drive to build this amazing company or business or anything. It was just, what do I love doing and what's going to get me out of the service industry right now? So I remember being so broke and went and got like one of my first credit cards and put my certification training stuff on it and was like, I'm just going to take the whole summer. I remember going to Barton Springs all the time and just like reading the book and doing all that. And I wasn't great in college. I didn't, one of my hangups or insecurities at an early age was I was really smart and got by on just sort of like talent, basically. And when I got to college, I had never really learned how to learn. And so I felt like learning all the stuff I needed to learn for training was actually kind of hard for me. And I was like, try to not think about it too much. Just take the 4 months or 3 months of summer and just do the best you can, basically. So did that, got my training certification. At the time, I was still at the Driscoll in the service industry, but then I got on at Gold's Gym downtown and was able to, they were catty corner from each other at the time, which was awesome for me because I was just double timing between the two, like would bounce back or go train at Gold's Gym, go back and work at the Driscoll, then go train in the evening at Gold's Gym. And it was great. I was hustling. It was the first time I was really putting in a lot of effort and work towards my own business. It was the first time I'd ever done that. But then also at Gold's Gym, I was like, man, they're keeping all my money. Like I got to get out of here. So it was really just, it was a numbers game. I was like, I can't keep giving up all this money. So I just started looking, this was 2007, 2008. I just started looking around on Craigslist to find like if anybody had gym space to like rent. And this is long before the boutique studio boom in Austin or around the country. Happened to find this place up in Hyde Park that was renting out gym space for trainers. It felt like a little basement. It was like in a little medical park area. It was maybe 800, 1,000 square feet. And there were like 5 or 6 trainers in there. And he was like, hey, it's $10 a session or you cap out at $600 a month. And I was like, perfect. I figured out the numbers in my head of how many Gold's Gym clients I had to poach. And I was a math guy growing up. That's what probably I would have majored in. So in my head, it was just more, again, a numbers game. I'm like, well, if I take this many clients from Gold's Gym, I only have to train this many people there to make as much as I was making at Gold's Gym. So why not go do it there? And then that just kind of snowballed. Once I moved over there, more friends and clients came to train with me because they didn't have to work at, or they didn't have to get a membership at Gold's Gym. They realized they were also supporting me and not Gold's Gym. So personal training business grew, and then that turned into a mutual friend reaching out to be like, hey, would you come rent space from me if I started a gym? Nice little white lie. I told him I was only paying $500 a month. If you wanted to give me a space for $500 a month, I'll come do it at your space. So he was like, done. That so he started what was called Austin Simply Fit. I rented space from him for the first year and a half. Then he moved into a brick and mortar. I remember up on North Burnett. It's still there. And the second he went into the brick and mortar, that's when I was like, hey, maybe we need to merge. I shouldn't just be renting space from you. Like, let's make this one thing. I was like, you can buy me out. I don't care about my business name. Like, let's just call it Austin Simply Fit and we're good. So that was sort of my first sort of, I don't know, merger and acquisition or whatever you want to call it. I don't even know what it was, and became like a business owner with him. I was the minority owner. He made all the decisions. We had one other partner, Krista actually is now still in charge of 2 locations of Austin Simply Fit. So did that with him or the 3 of them for a couple of years. And I was burning both ends of the candle. Like I was partying hard at night, training all day, destroying my body, and just burnt myself out. Like I was done. Like I had been training for 8 years and was like, I can't do this anymore. It was also because I was partying way too hard at night too. Like my body just wasn't recovering. So I took a buyout from Austin Simply Fit at the end of 2013, which was the same time Casey, my wife, graduated grad school. So we took a couple years of traveling, music festivals, just like doing everything together. And then the money ran out and hopped back on with FX Fit, which then became Gym Studios, and then trained with Gym Studios for a while, then went into event coordinating with them, which turned into content creation, which then turned into Authentic Exposure. So some serendipitous things happened with Sean over at Gym Studios. where I landed into content creation. I was like, man, I think I can like kind of do this. I think I can make this my career. And I'd always had a hobbyist passion for it growing up. Like I was the kid in high school with a disposable camera, always taking pictures and things like that. But of course, in 1999, when I graduated, nobody was like, hey, go be a photographer. Like just go get a camera and be a photographer. Like do that, you know? So, so that turned into 2018 was when I decided to buy my first professional camera. And then so the rest of 2018 was a lot of, I was still personal training, still event coordinating with gym studios, doing content creation for them, and then trying to build a portfolio on the side. And then 2019, I went full freelance. I quit training, quit everything else. I was like, financially, I wasn't ready to do it. I wasn't making enough money yet, but I was like, I got to put both feet in. Otherwise I'm going to sink. I'm spread too thin all over the place. Mm-hmm. So 2019 went full freelance. And then by 2020 moved into the studio space. And then by 2021, it was when really the Authentic Exposure Studio like opened and started taking off. Obviously, because moving in at the beginning of the pandemic was a little tricky.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you weather the storm in terms of?
A few things. Luckily, I had a little money saved up. That definitely helped. My wife and I having the suite together, she definitely helped carry us a little bit during that time. She, her clientele didn't slow down or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. In fact, it might have even increased.
It did. Yeah. It increased.
I know COVID pushed so many people into therapy.
Yeah. So she took care of that. And then I didn't have a lot of overhead with the studio because we were sharing the space and we were actually renting out a couple offices. The overhead was kept pretty low. Mm-hmm. And then I was still getting a gig here or there with photography and doing that work. But what it did allow me to do was I didn't even know that I was going to get a studio until we looked at that space. So it really allowed me to start doing research, watching YouTubers, testing ideas, getting lighting, doing this, doing that, like figuring it all out and tinkering for the first 6 months. It also allowed Casey to just be pregnant and have a space to come back to when she needed to rest from her clientele. So I do believe everything happens for a reason. So that space served its purpose as sort of our relaxation safe haven during her first months of pregnancy or leading up to birth. So it was, I would say around the end of 2020, I started to get a few renters through Peer Space when things started to open back up. Mm-hmm. The studio definitely didn't look like what it looks like now, but then all the renovations happened in 2021 and then Atlas was born. I like to say Atlas was born in February of 2021 and then the studio was born in April of 2021.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, have you always been a saver? Have you always been putting money aside?
Oh God, no. No.
Yeah. When did that start? Because it sounded like
during my 20s, I was paycheck to paycheck. So definitely not saving during that time. Once I started to make some money and was able to put some away, then I almost became like a hoarder of money because I was so fearful of going back to scarcity. When you've lived paycheck to paycheck or lived out of your car and have had zero money, I don't know if I've shared this with very many people, zero money to the point where I've stolen food in the past, Yeah.
Guilty of it as well.
So
I had to do that when I was 19 years old.
Yeah, I think I was about the same age, 19.
Had zero money. I had nothing to eat. And I was just I got to go steal a pizza or something. I've got to go steal something. And
Same.
I remember going into, I think it was a Walgreens or CVS. I should probably send them a check. But I went in there with a jacket on and I was in the freezer section. I remember sliding a pizza or something under my jacket and zipping it up and being this is it. I literally, and then as soon as I got some money, I remember buying as many ramen noodle cases as I could buy because I was at least these will give me something.
Yeah, exactly. I remember I'd buy these big bags or steal these big bags of shredded chicken because I'm well, at least I have chicken and I can find some friends with some tortillas and just make quesadillas.
We'll have something. Yeah, man. So, tough stuff. Where are you from? When you said you left your hometown.
I was originally born in Idaho. We left Boise when I was 7 or 8. And then I call it my glory years were in Portland, Oregon, a little suburb, Tigard, Oregon. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was there from 7 to, I think I left when I was 24, 25. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So how's the studio doing now? How do you guys feel about like where are you headed? What do you see as like the,
Man, I've been trying to figure that out because for so long it was just start bringing in some revenue at the studio. Like
Right.
how can I get it attractive enough to get people renting it? And then the other big reason is because, like I said, I wanted to be a dad. So how can I bring people to me so I can just be a dad and not have to go out in the field and do photography and do film all the time? So, which is what we did most of 2021. We got it to that point where we were renting it enough. The bills were covered. I could pay my assistant. I could hang out with Atlas and do all the fun stuff. And then near the end of 2021 and setting our goals for 2022, I was like, where are we going to take the studio now? Like, what do we want it to be? Do we want it to be strictly podcast production? Do we want to phase out any photography rentals? Like, do I want to keep having, say, like backdrops in here or not? Do we want to offer more production services for video content creation? So what do I want to do for my own content? Can I start utilizing the studio for my own content to hopefully monetize, say, through a podcast or through YouTube or something like that? So I think we're still navigating it right now, honestly. I kind of feel like we do have the niche of podcasts starting to happen. I think it's getting there. We have a few new clients on hand. I would like to phase out any photography rentals there. It just, the vibe of the space, I want to keep it more video podcast content creation, and then we are definitely trying to work on more of my own content as far as like TikTok goes and reels and things like that. Like you guys have seen a few.
Yeah, I really love
up.
it. Yeah.
I don't know where that's going to land us as far as doing those. I just do it because I finally am in a place where I'm like, you know what? I need to knock out some content. It's fun if I do it with Atlas. I think I have some knowledgeable wisdom to share with people. So I should probably start putting out a few things here and there.
Yeah. And you put out some really good stuff. So first of all, I love the closed captions that you use. I think they're they've got a great pop to them. And
thanks.
I feel like a lot of people could learn something from that because sometimes you see people talking, you just keep scrolling. But I feel like your captions kind of go, oh, well, they pull me into whatever that conversation is, even if I don't hear it. So I think kudos on that, but real big kudos on your authenticity around content, around how you feel about it, around, like, hey, not really sure if this is going to go well. I'm going to blend some things here. Let me be honest and say I don't want to do content.
I definitely show up to the studio some days where I'm like, I don't want to do that.
And I love that you hop on your camera and say, yeah, I don't want to do this right now.
And believe me, folks, I see the irony in creating a content video about not liking creating content.
Of course.
So.
And actually, this is a good way for me to shift into one of the last things I want to talk to you about. So with that, you are creating content, you are showing this studio life, this fatherhood life, your relationship, which is absolutely inspiring and beautiful. Your wife is gorgeous, and you have a way of capturing her and y'all's experience in such a really, I think every girl is probably looking, going, if I just had a guy that could, paint me like that.
She does love having a professional photographer as a husband.
Yeah. You don't get to benefit quite so much from the psychotherapy as, no, I'm just kidding. Yeah. I'm sure you do. But it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful.
Well, thank you.
And one of the things that you have been interweaving, which is one of the things I want to end with, is kind of talking about this, but is the spiritual nature. It's already shown up in this conversation, but talk to me about that. Why is that so important for you to broadcast, I guess you could say, or show publicly? What is it about spirituality that's so important to you?
It's that better world for my son. It's the better world for all of humanity. If we're all in this together, which that's what I believe, the only way forward and the only way to get the Eden, get the heaven on earth, to get to a place where everyone is taken care of, everyone is happy, everybody is love. Everybody is unity. Everybody is joyful. Nobody is like lacking anything. You know, those things will only come with a spiritual higher awakening from everybody. Mm-hmm. It's that simple. You know, the solution to the world's problems is the collective, expansive consciousness of everybody to understand that. Mm-hmm. And if that doesn't happen, we might be in a little bit of trouble. I don't know. I don't know. And I want to believe that it'll happen. I for sure have that hope, because, you know, what are we without that hope? But that's the most important thing right now. Like, of course I identify as a photographer and a filmmaker and a father and a husband. But those are all of my like human identities. The identity that's most important to me is God. We are all God. So how do we make sure, or how do we get to a place where everyone understands that and everyone treats each other like that? Because that's the only way out of this. We can sit here and try to say, well, we need the Democrats to do this, the Republicans to do this, we need police to do this, we need however many other laundry lists of things you want to throw up there that you want to complain about or say that somebody else has to do. But really, treat yourself right, clean up your own shit, treat everybody else right, live in joy, live in unity and not separation, and that's what's going to lift all of us to a higher level. Don't rely on anybody else to take care of that. And so to me, it's the spirituality component. And spirituality, I mean, it can be defined, I think it can be defined in a lot of different ways. Whether it's new age or old stuff, or however people want to look at it. It's whatever practice you need to do to get to a place of joy all the time, to understand yourself, to know who you are, and to be able to serve others, serve yourself and serve others. So whatever that is for you, whatever definition that is, whether that's the universe, God, Buddha, go down the list. But whatever gets you to a place of joy and unity and love all the time. That's it. So,
dude, thank you so much for doing that, for putting yourself out there like that and showing up and being authentic. I feel like it gives us all opportunity to say, hey, like we can be that side of ourselves in front of people. And we can actually that can be a part of our brand. And that's one of the things I love so much about what you're doing is like, so many of us would keep that behind the curtain because we'd be afraid of our brand having haters or whatever, or people thinking that we're trying to, you know, stand on some throne and be a sage on the stage. You know, they may take it in some way and pervert our mission or pervert what we're really feeling. And so a lot of us will hide it, you know, we'll keep it back there, or we're afraid of stepping on somebody's toes or offending someone. And I really I love and honor that you bring it out in front and say, hey, no, this is a big part of it. Like, we need to do this, you know?
We do. I think you can't hide it. It needs to be out there. There's obviously always going to be haters, and believe me, I love them too. It's how it has to be. You know, you can't pick and choose who you love and then expect the world to become better when you're not being true to yourself about love. If you want to say you're love, then you better love everybody, including the Donald Trumps of the world.
Right.
You know? So.
Yeah. It's funny. There's this recurring theme. I've brought on so many different people with so many different backgrounds. There is a recurring theme that has showed up in this work about becoming love, about being authentic, about coming from a loving space. And this isn't on purpose at all. I've never brought anyone in there's no purpose that I have other than to explore fatherhood, what it means to be a man, our personal journeys, entrepreneurship, things like that. That's all I'm asking to explore. But for some reason, it comes up over and over again. We're becoming love. We need to be more authentic. And so I keep seeing this theme over and over and over again. And I wonder if it's a part of, this journey, but also like the journey of being a man, becoming a father. Because when you're a father, like you said, you were selfish prior to having a child, right? But then you have a child, you think about his world. And then you have to think, all of a sudden the virtues and the values show up. You're like, oh man, we better become more virtuous. We better have better values because we're leaving something here to another generation. And that becomes really apparent when you are a parent. No pun intended on that. And so it really is the work. I feel like it's like that. The only way out of this is in.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And all the wisdom teachers knew this. One of the things I think is some people they're a little worried about spirituality because I think they think of it as hippie or I think they think of it as hairy-fairy kind of talk. Right. And I've been exploring spirituality from so many different angles, from the Native Americans, the Tao, looking at Buddha, looking at Hinduism, Kabbalism, like all these different places. And I would say if you're a manly man, like you're like a brute, you like to be kind of a rough guy, you don't really like the soft talk, look to his stoicism. Because that's a place where you can find a philosophical, spiritual like nature that will speak to that side of you that doesn't particularly like all the softer side of spirituality. Stoicism has something there because it's like the middle path. It's the middle way. It's not too much on one end, not too much on the other. And it really acknowledges and in fact embraces the hardship of life as opposed to trying to cover it up. It's not happy, happy high notes all the time. And just like we talked about earlier about how like we get these greatest characteristics and life skills, honestly, through the hard stuff.
It is. It's always through the hard stuff.
It's always through the hard stuff. So this challenge we're presented, if we were to take this challenge on its face as the biggest blessing humanity has ever seen, it's a reframe. And the reason it's a reframe is because the biggest challenges you've ever had on a micro, on your life, the biggest challenges you've ever had have given you the seed of the greatest blessings, whether you took it or not. Not saying everybody did. A lot of us don't. But our biggest challenges are the opportunity to create those greatest life skills and characteristics. So humanity right now may have the greatest opportunity to become its best self.
It's so true. We're at a monumental moment where we can go to this new unfound potential. And I think the only way to get to that potential is to reach within yourself and find your higher self. And whatever spiritual practice gets you there, there's many ways up that mountain.
Right.
Tons of ways up that mountain.
Nietzsche said, they asked, what is the way? And he said, well, this is my way, but it's not the way.
Exactly.
What is your way?
Exactly. And so, lots of ways up the mountain, but I think everybody has to find that path for themselves and figure out what it is for them to get to that higher place, that higher plane. Because we're not just humans here living out this like physical existence here. There's far more going on. So hopefully more people dive into it. Hopefully more people recognize that if they decide to heal and decide to know there is more to them than their narrative or their story or all the things they want to say about what their life has been, they will be able to reach a potential that they never knew existed.
Yeah, that's another good point really quick on that note is that maybe you're, if you're like the manly man that's like, I don't like all that spirituality stuff, go to Stoicism. Definitely look into it. Really a lot of strong wisdom there to draw from that will get you higher, to take you to a higher place. And maybe you're the selfish type. Maybe you're like, hey, I'm still selfish. I just don't really care about whatever's going on there. Let me tell you, you can actually reach higher potential in your business, in your influence, through personal work.
Yeah.
And one of my mentors used to say, business growth is autobiographical. Your business will grow in proportion to you growing. Mm-hmm. And so maybe you are the selfish type. You would want to pursue this so that you become the best leader you can be, so that you have the edge, so that you have the kind of influence that you need to have to build the kind of things you want to build. You have reason to do this as well. Mm-hmm. Even if it's not from the heart and you want to do it from the mind, you still have a reason here to pursue this type of work. My
greatest year of growth came after doing, what would have been a 10-month study of Kabbalah ended up being a year and a half because of COVID. But that study is like 10 years of psychotherapy. And my greatest business growth, relationship growth, family growth, all happened after doing that Kabbalistic journey.
I did that. I did some of that as well. One of the coolest insights that they shared that I got from a training, I don't know what training you did. What training did you do?
With Mystery School.
Okay. So there's a particular part of their, I would say, worldview or perspective on our nature, like for our ego and our spirit, that I found so incredibly insightful. And that was, the ego grows in proportion to the spirit, because the ego is our greatest challenger and is our greatest blessing. But it's the challenge for us to pursue the love, like for God's adornment, basically, for God to adore us and we to build a relationship of love with God. We have to face our ego, who's constantly challenging us and trying to separate us from God.
Exactly.
And it's like he's trying to constantly, or he or your ego is constantly trying to create this barrier, because that is the vessel, essentially, is the barrier between God and you is this ego, and you're never exonerated.
No.
You will never reach a point at which that challenger is like, okay, you win.
Yeah, no.
And in that, I remember thinking, man, the Dalai Lama must have like the biggest ego ever.
Who was it? I think it was Jordan Peterson who, man, I'm going to probably butcher this a little bit, but it was essentially that you don't want to try to make a man not be a monster. It's like, recognize that you are a monster and learn how to tame it.
Right. That was Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing. In that teaching, I remember them teaching is like, stop trying to get rid of your ego, man. Like that's not the goal. The goal is to make sure that you're growing your spirit.
Right. And
actually the ego will present the challenges for you to grow the spirit. So that is your partner in crime. That's your,
should be grateful for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, it's time to be grateful for this part of you.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the great opponent in every, comic script or wherever. It's like that. That's inside of you. You have that opportunity right there. And it shows up daily, right? Did you want to get out of bed? Maybe. Did you want to do this? Like, that's your challenge. That is, and the Stoics teach a lot about that same thing. Like, these are the challenges are gifts from the gods.
They are. So my wife and I, every week check in with each other. We actually decipher between negative ego and positive ego. So we'll check in with each other and be like, where's your negative ego coming up this week? What's holding you back? What are you working on? And we do that with her colleagues that are in the space as well. We're like, every week we're checking in with each other.
Beautiful, man. Yeah. Wanted to just thank you so much for being here and ask you, like, how can people find you? How can they get connected with you?
Oh, let's see. Instagram is my personal is The Authentic Exposure. The studio page is Authentic Exposure Studio. And I believe it is the same on TikTok. So The Authentic Exposure and Authentic Exposure Studio.
Thank you for enhancing this pursuit of our greatest humanity, a greater mankind, by being your authentic self, by doing the work, by showing up, by infusing your little one and your family with so much love and honor. And we're just, man, I'm just super grateful. I really, really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. I'm very appreciative to come here.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you've received some value from it, please share it with other dads and consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform, and we'll see you in the next episode. Looking for support with your fatherhood journey? Go to bedadly.com and take our Dadly Disposition quiz and learn helpful insights on how you can overcome power struggles with your kids.